the Lift Big, Eat Big show. We're on episode 10. We might continue our conversation around massive XL shops here in the USA that you can buy shirts past 8XL for all the massive fat dudes. It's only a menswear shop too. Uh, and then, but we're going to go into today another topic on growing muscle. We've covered shoulders. We've talked about overhead press. Last week we talked about a huge squat. You can listen to those after this. But today we're going to talk about the glutes, which is, I think, the female version of the biceps, chest and biceps. Female version is the glutes.
Sure.
Yeah, but even dudes still need a perky butt. You can't have a pancake butt in your suit pants or whatever you're wearing. So we want to cover that. But also remember in the description as well, the Lift Big Eat Big Underground has all our training programs, all of Colm's strongman programs, all of Mona's weightlifting programs, all of the strength and size programs are all in there for one-time low subscription per month. So check that out. But today we have, as usual, we have Colm, 2 times world's strongest man competitor and New Zealand's strongest man, a bunch of other accolades in the strength sports world. Then we have Mona with little Mia up there. Mona's 6 times karate world champion, CrossFit Games athlete, Commonwealth medalist, and African champion, all in Olympic weightlifting as well. So heaps of experience on the table here. But let's dive straight into glute training and getting a big perky butt. Now, I'm going to start this by saying if you're following those Instagram people who do those booty workouts and you try and doing that and it's not working, there's a reason it's not working, because those suck and you should stop following those people and doing all those bullshit band exercises. They're going to do shit for you. And I'm going to tell you exactly why. But first, we break down to some really, I guess, basic anatomy. You have the gluteus maximus. That's like the biggest muscle in your butt. It's the most powerful muscle, I think, in the entire body, really. And its main function is hip extension. So essentially bringing the hips forward or kicking the leg back, but also does the upper glute max does external rotation. So essentially turning your hip, I guess, turning your foot out to the side, I guess you could, is the easiest way to explain it. But then it's also involved in hip abduction. So think of those side-lying leg raises. They did it all through the 80s and things like that. So gluteus maximus is a lot of things. The glute medius and minimus help with a lot of those movements, but you can target, funny enough, you can actually target upper and lower portions of your glutes. So a lot of people will say, you do, for example, push-ups or whatever, and you target the whole chest, but you can't isolate different parts of the chest. But that doesn't seem to be true for most muscle groups. So even with the abs, you can target lower and upper abs with different exercises. So leg raises will target your lower abs, crunches will target your upper abs, and you've probably felt this. I'm sure you guys have felt this too with different exercises. But it's the same with the glutes. You can target the upper glutes and the lower glutes with different exercises. And I think the most important takeaway when we're talking about glute training is the gluteus maximus, the big muscle of the butt, doesn't really kick in until the force requirements are high enough. So if you're doing those stupid band exercises and walking side to side, your glute maximus isn't getting much stimulus, and it doesn't really kick in until you're actually lifting something heavy and hard. And I think that's the biggest, where most people get it wrong with glute training. They'll do these band exercises and they skip that whole portion. But I think obviously with the rise of many different lifts on like the hip thrust and things, that's changing. But if we start with lifting heavy and bring in that glute maximus. So when squatting, lunging, and deadlifting, the contribution from the glutes increases as the load increases. And if we take a look at some of the research there, we see the hips provide 33% greater contribution of the glutes when you squat 90% of 1RM versus 50% 1RM. So a third increase just from that increase in load. Same thing when we lunge, we see a 22.8% greater hip contribution when you add 50% additional body weight versus a 12.5% additional body weight load when lunging. And then same thing with deadlifting, 80% 1RM versus 10% 1RM increases hip contribution by 33%. So essentially, as you're adding load to these exercises, your glutes become more involved in the movement, and that's going to help them grow. Now, we can also talk about glute activation and this whole idea around you need to activate your glutes. You have glute amnesia, you have sleepy glutes. I'm sure you guys have all heard this too, but essentially it's a crock of shit.
People, I just want to interrupt that because people bring that up all the time. I was going to say people bring that up all the time because, and I think a lot of it stems from, them going to see a physical therapist or maybe a chiropractor, whoever, and they all tell them, oh, you're not activating your glutes. And that's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just heard so many athletes come to me and be like, hey, I went to a physical therapist and they say my glutes are sleepy.
Yeah. But if your glutes were asleep, you wouldn't be walking. That's the problem. And if we actually dive into the research on glute activation, there's some research showing, okay, it might help, but most of it is showing essentially it's not helping. And a lot of it is extrapolated from pretty dodgy stuff. So I think one of the main studies, they did a 7-exercise glute circuit and they compared that against 2 other warm-up protocols, but they were like the shittiest warm-up protocols you would ever use. And then they was showing, okay, well, the glute activation protocol was best. I mean, you did a 7-exercise circuit. Yeah, it's going to be better than sitting there static stretching. So you can't take that into real context. And then same thing, we've got glute activation warm-ups. A lot of them use that same 7-exercise circuit, a reduction in jump height after completing the activation. So it might even reduce your performance depending on how you're doing it. And then also over the long term, people will be like, okay, glute activation is going to make my glutes stronger and I'm going to be able to do essentially lift more weight over time, etc. So 3 times per week for 6 weeks of glute activation training does not enhance glute activation or strength in the long term. So yeah, it's not something that is going to build your glutes and directly give you a bigger butt. But in saying that, there is a time and place for doing something before your training if you cannot feel your glutes when you're doing various exercises. So if you're coming in, your first exercise is a hip thrust or a Romanian deadlift or whatever it is, and you struggle to feel your glutes while training, then doing some kind of activation beforehand can help carry that feeling over into that movement. And that's positive because if you can't feel the muscle working, it's going to be difficult for you to help that grow within certain exercises. I don't know if you've had anything like that, Colm, with maybe yourself or clients where, maybe they can't feel certain muscles working and your main goal is hypertrophy. You do something beforehand.
Yeah. And so I do use like a basic hip circle quite a bit, but mainly with general population people, like you're saying, just to get a bit of feeling. But if the goal is hypertrophy for the glute of the glutes, we have to progress. Like you said, the load, like doing a band walk, is just not big. We can't progress it. So, but it's a nice first step for a general population person who doesn't do much, doesn't know how to activate their glutes at all, and suddenly you put this band on it. It's a band on them around their knees. It's a nice safe exercise. They can do a little bit initially. And I still do use that like quite a bit for general pop, just as a nice simple warm up. But that's all I see it as. A nice simple warm up. And just like you're saying, I've seen it taken really, really far, like with people doing some ridiculous amounts of volume on it. But it's not going to like basic progressive overload on those exercises that you can progress over time is what is going to lead to hypertrophy in the glutes.
Yeah, it's the big compound exercises, and one of those. I mean, the squat is a contentious one within the space. It depends on your build with the squat. Some people pretty much nail their quads squatting. Other people can grow their glute squatting. So there's going to be a trial and error, I guess, through down the line. But the most important thing is if you're squatting and your priority is glute development, you have to squat deep. If you're cutting your squats short, you're basically cutting your glute growth short within that. And there's multiple types of squats too, right? Your front squat, back squat, low bar squat. And yes, we can say, okay, low bar squat is probably going to be better for glute development because you have that slight forward lean. That slight forward lean brings the hips into the movement a little more than being completely upright. Yes, I can see that, but I don't think it matters that much in the grand scheme of things. Also, if you look at some of the research as well, they found bodybuilders had the greatest glute activation when they're doing front squats, which is sounds counterintuitive. But I think as long as you're squatting deep, the glutes are involved. Like you can't not push with the glutes during a squat. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that as well, Colm, in terms of squatting and glute growth. Is that one of your go-to exercises for glutes?
Yeah, I definitely use a lot of squat variations, and like we mentioned in the episode on squats, like all squat variations are fantastic, and yeah, for the
Mm.
glutes you have to go to full depth. So if you like doing that ultra wide style,
Ah,
the
yeah.
multiply kind of squat, in
Mm-hmm.
theory, you're like loading the hips a lot, but you're just not getting that as big a range of motion. Even though technically, like you're saying, the high bar squat, you're going to be more upright. It's going to be more quad. If you're suddenly going all the way down, though, the glutes are going to be in more of a stretch at the bottom. Have to use the glutes to get out of the hole. Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely think kind of whatever squat variation allows you to safely perform the biggest range of motion is the one to go with. Barring other issues, obviously the low bar has the upper body, elbow, and shoulder strain, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But ultimately, yeah, big depth for glutes. Same with lunge variations, nice big depth, so you can elevate
Yeah.
the front foot, that sort of thing.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, I think just like you said, it's all about the depth really
Yeah.
when it comes to squats and glutes.
Yeah, for sure. Mona, I know you've got some of your favorite glute exercise. Mia's not happy about the glute exercises. What are some of your go-to exercises?
Yeah, some of my favorite glute exercises. Now, one thing I must mention, being an Olympic weightlifter, I feel like also being in the sport for so long, it's one of those sports that like just really grows your butt nicely. Even though the goal in weightlifting is to lift as heavy as you can in competition, obviously with like good technique and whatever, especially if you're a competitor. But you never see a weightlifter with no butt. So it's one of those things that is like an extra benefit on top of it, because every single thing that you do is a squat, like a snatch, a clean and jerk, and then you do squats, and then you do pulls. So everything works, and you'll even do things like your Romanian deadlifts and those kind of things. And that's also the Romanian deadlifts is also one of my other favorite exercises to do. But yeah, definitely squats. I'm more front squat kind of person. That's one of my favorites. Back squat I like, but yeah, if I had to choose, front squats all the way. Actually, one of the exercises I really love that is also really great for like building big glutes is Bulgarian split squats. And I know that's one of
Oh, yeah.
James's least favorite, because even if he
I
puts it
hate
in a
it.
program and we have to do it, that's one of the things where he's like, okay, if we have to cut something else, we cut out the Bulgarian
I
split
never
squat.
cut anything. I do
Yeah,
everything always.
I'm sorry for throwing you under the bus, but but
I do
you hate
everything.
it. No,
I
he
do
does
everything
do
on the
it,
program.
but but it's not his favorite. But yeah, things like Bulgarian split squats. I know people have a love-hate relationship with it, because for me it's one of those exercises because I can just really feel it work. It's super challenging, and just because I do squat variations with both my legs. Always, I don't do single leg work much, but obviously now that I'm not doing a lot of weightlifting, I really am trying to emphasize a lot more of those type of exercises. Like I actually just started, I'm in week 3 now of a glute emphasis program, because I actually said, after little Mia was born, that I need a goal. I need to get back to training. And obviously at the moment, weightlifting is not my main priority, but I do need something to work for. And one of the things that I thought, I just, from all the years of doing weightlifting, like that was one thing of mine that I didn't have to train extra. I didn't have to work for a big butt or anything like that, because weightlifting just kind of did that for me. But now that, I don't do a lot of weightlifting, that was actually the first thing that I saw in my own body that has kind of disappeared. So now I'm doing my glute focus program. And it was funny because I've been posting it on Instagram, and I have had so many women comment or ask me about my program, because it's one of those super popular things, like what you were saying earlier, James. It's like, um, you know, uh, people post, booty workouts all over the internet and band workouts and like all these kind of things. It doesn't really work. And a lot of them, it it's also one of those things where it has to do with your genetics. It has to do with just, a lot of people Photoshop it in there, do everything they should, and it's, the way they sell programs. But in essence, to get a big, strong butt, you have to do, like you guys mentioned, you have to do the compound movements. You have to do, strength movements, push it, go heavy. You can't just sit with like a few body weight exercises and whatever. And yes, Calm, you were right. Like for the general population, that's definitely a way to start if you've never trained before. I'm all for that. I mean, for me, I love giving those exercises with bands and even the body weight work. I like giving that even as warm-ups for my weightlifters, because it tends to help them, like you were mentioning earlier, just helping them feel the glutes a bit more, but also just helps them sit in a squat more comfortably. But yeah, other things that I really like is things like your hip thrust. That's probably one of my favorite ones to do. And I don't know if there's any mommies listening, or mommy athletes, or women thinking of like having babies in the future. But I know this is one thing that I even wondered about a lot before I had Mia, is where do I place the bar with hip thrust to still make sure that, I feel my glutes. And because I had a C-section and I obviously still have the scar, it will be there for a very long time. I'm still in recovery. But we found a way that I can actually do it with a bar and with weights. I've just moved where I put the bar for hip thrust. So I put it now at the high part of my thighs. So I can do those types of exercises again, which has been really exciting. And yeah, when it comes to probably my favorite exercises, that's it.
Before getting back to the podcast, I want to let you know that down in the description is a link to the Lift Big, Eat Big Underground. And within that, you get access to all our training programs, online courses, and into our private Discord community, where all three of us are in there to help you with whatever it is with your training. Regarding the programs, we have Mona, who's done all of the weightlifting cycles. We have Colm, who's done the strongman off-season and strongman competition programs. Then we have all the hallmark Lift Big, Eat Big training programs, Pump Dragon, Flanks Method, and many more. And I've also added muscle building specialization programs within that, and are continuing to update and add training programs into our app. You also get access to Mona's Weightlifting Mastery online course, and you get to join these calls live in the audience, where you can ask members only question and answers at the end of each episode. So if that sounds like you, go down in the description. There's a link there to the Lift Big, Eat Big Underground, and that'll give you access to everything I just mentioned. Nice. Yeah, it's funny. The hip thrust is, I think, the most hated glute exercise currently. I don't know why. It's funny when Brett Contreras, obviously the inventor of the hip thrust, so he came and studied at our university, and you obviously met Brett as well, Colin, when he came down to So when he posted on his blog, however, this was over 10 years ago, I think, that he was coming to New Zealand to study this, and I remember commenting on that, and then I was in the gym the next day. And I was like, okay, he's probably going to be in the gym that day too. And he happened to be went to the gym the same time that I went in. And on that day, I also happened to have hip thrusts on my program. None of that was planned. It just happened to fall on that day. So I introduced myself to Brett while he was lifting and stuff. And then I had him watch me do hip thrusts. Basically, the first day I was there to get the technique from the master, basically. And I've been using it ever since. And then I think it's a really good exercise. I use it even within the athletic population. I think it serves an awesome purpose in the, I guess, the bodybuilding physique world for building glutes. I think it's probably the most underrated exercise for glutes that people should be. I mean, if glutes is your priority, you should be hip thrusting. I think it's that simple. Many people would be like, oh, you don't need to do it. You can just do squats, lunges, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, you can, but you can also use the hip thrust. And the hip thrust, the burn you get in your glutes from doing that is insane. The loads you can put up are huge too. But even within athletic populations, the reason I really like it is because you don't get the axial loading stress, so the stress of the bar, say, sitting on your back going through your spine with heavy loads. Whereas hip thrust, you can load heavy, you can still get that stimulus, but you're not getting that same systemic fatigue that you're going to get from heavy squatting or heavy deadlifting. And that's what I really, really like about the hip thrust, at least in an athletic population sense, because obviously the technical side is your most important. Whereas if you're just training for physique, go broke in the gym. The only thing you need to recover for is the next session of doing the same thing. So hip thrust is definitely a go-to. Another interesting one, I don't know if you've played around a lot with it, Colm, is the step up. I wrote the step up off for many years, in fact, forever. I barely did them. I didn't prescribe them at all. really. I didn't think they served much value. But I was reading a pretty interesting article. Anthony Datillo's blog. I don't know if you follow Anthony Datillo's blog. He reposts like all the old time strongman articles from the magazines and things. And he had one, an old magazine, and it was, I think it was Terry Todd. Terry Todd and the Bulgarian weightlifting coach, and it was something from like the late 80s. And there was this anecdotal thing in there where the Bulgarian weightlifting team at that time stopped squatting altogether, so no squats, and only did the step up. And they were doing the step up like stupidly heavy, like, and breaking clean and jerk world records. Obviously, there's other things, compounds involved, but to be able to remove the squat, step up over 500 pounds for 3 reps a leg, and to be that brutally strong from that exercise, plus, I guess one of the recent meta-analysis papers looking at glute, I guess, activation during different exercises found the step up to activate the glutes to the greatest extent compared to every other exercise. I don't know if that's because there's a stability component to it as well that maybe led to that EMG activity. But regardless, you have that, plus you have, a little field test with a weightlifting team removing the squat completely and just doing the step up for years. Yeah, that blew my mind. So I've started doing quite a few step ups since, which is, it's been interesting. I don't know if you've come across anything common with the step up, or is that something you like?
Yeah, I'm actually a big fan of the step up. I use it more so though, like as an assistance move for strongmen. So I first started experimenting with it after I saw Brian Shaw doing like I guess maybe you'd call it a Hatfield, like the safety squat bar. So he didn't have to hold on it, and then he was doing a step up. I quite like that variation, but I normally use it to not as big a depth, and I save the bigger depth for Bulgarians or a lunge variation. But this is talking, I'm using it mainly for strongmen. But I can definitely see a purpose for it in growing the glutes as well. My assumption would be it would be better for the glutes if you can do a decent step. So you're getting a big range of motion, but not to the point that you're jumping off the other leg too much. If you go too high, I imagine you're just going to have to jump off the other leg a bit too much. But I was curious if you know what sort of height they were doing it when they replaced their squat training with.
So they did it based on if they had quad or hamstring weakness. So they would do lower boxes for the ones who needed to build their quad strength, and they would do higher boxes for ones that needed to build their hamstring glute strength. So I think that anything above where the thigh is parallel is where it will be more glute hamstring. So when I do them, I just do them like the top of thigh will be parallel basically with the floor. So like a 90-90 degree angle. And that seems fine. But with the rugby players who used to train for sprinting and stuff, I'd do super low. I would do like a 45-pound bumper plate, and that would be the box. So you load it up super heavy, and it's just about stiffness when you hit the plate and push. But again, that's different to the glute stuff. But that's just like getting rapid hip extension under huge load with a very small thing. Another glute exercise as well is obviously the glute bridge. And many people use that as either a warm-up, a physio exercise. Some people will load it. So a difference between a glute bridge and a hip thrust, for anyone listening who's not quite sure. A hip thrust, you have your back against the bench, whereas a glute bridge, you're lying flat on the floor. So the hip thrust, you have a larger range of motion, and the glute bridge, you have a smaller range of motion, but you can obviously use more weight with the smaller range of motion. Now, I'm not so much of a fan of the glute bridge for building glute. I mean, actually for really anything, to be honest, even loaded. Even though you get larger glute activation from it, but I mean, you have a shorter range of motion and usually heavier loads too. So, it's something you can use, but I think the hip thrust has more value than the glute bridge for that. I don't know if Colm, you got any comments on that too?
Yeah, I would agree. The only reason I've really used a glute bridge is just equipment. That's the one drawback I find with a hip thrust is just setting it up.
Oh, dude, the setup is such a bitch.
Yeah, I unfortunately don't I do try to implement it in a lot of my online clients' programs, but it's often the one if it's a strongman athlete and they're already doing a lot of squats and deadlift movements, by the time they get to it, they're often they can't be bothered, and I always see it left out. So we go with other variations, but depending on what the person's goal is, and also just what how easy it is for them to set up at that particular gym. Some gyms it's
Yeah.
easier to set up than others.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, if I had the choice, equipment's no issue. I would go hip thrust every day, basically, over the glute bridge.
Yeah.
We
For those same
actually
reasons.
remember it was one of the commercial gyms in New Zealand. There was actually one of those glute bridge machines, and that just
Oh
made
yeah, those are
glute,
those hip thrust machines are legit.
yeah, hip thrusting
Yeah.
machines, yeah, and that just made hip thrusting so much easier. I mean, if you load a barbell, like for you guys to feel something, if you're like strongman or even weightlifters, you know, and you guys want to actually get a good workout in, I mean, you probably have to load like 300 kilos, and
So you need
the
3
amount of
platforms.
yeah,
And
imagine
then
the
you need to
amount of
bench.
yeah to do that. So I can see why for a lot of people it can be missions. It's almost one of those exercises like even bent over rows, you know, the ones on the boxes that you have to do. What do you call that?
Seal row or bench pull.
Yeah, that one. It's such a fun one to do, but setting up is just such a mission. But I guess, you know, if you do it and it's like, you know, once or twice a week and it's like the first exercise and you get it over and done with, I feel like that's probably the best way to get a client motivated to do that. I actually wanted to say another one that is also really good. That's, you know, kind of like full body where it works, you know, the hamstrings and the lower back as well. But good mornings is another one that I enjoy doing. And I actually do it a little bit differently, and I prescribe it a little bit differently to obviously when I program it to weightlifters, I will actually do a good morning like you would do it, but then I'll have the athlete actually come up explosively onto their toes. And I just find like even with that movement, doing the explosiveness, yes, it's got a good carryover to weightlifting because you want that explosive second pull. But then also with doing that, you actually feel the glutes a lot more.
I really like, as soon as Mona did that variation, that's how I do my good mornings now. If I do them, I don't really do good mornings too often now, but if I do them, I love that variation. It's just like
I have to give them a go.
Yeah, honestly, try it. It feels really good.
Yeah, I must give credit. I was on a training camp in Egypt and we were training with the national team. And that's where I saw it the first time. And when I started like doing that, we were obviously told, you know, this is how we're going to do it, like when we do it on training camps and stuff. And since then, I think I was about 15 or 16 when I went on that training camp. And since then, it's been like the number one exercise. And I've never seen other countries do it. That's the other thing. You know, you'll always, if you see weightlifters doing it, they'll do it the traditional way, going down slow, coming up, you know, normal speed. But if you think about it, in a sport like weightlifting, where your second pull has to be so explosive, by doing the movement that has the direct carryover, I actually found that it helped me be more aggressive in my second pull as well.
Yeah, you see Muhammad Ehab do it often, don't you?
Yes. They actually, the way some of them actually do it is with a jump. I wouldn't recommend anyone doing that unless you are an elite level athlete, because doing a good morning and jumping with it, and then
funnily enough,
what?
the good morning with the jump is an exercise that I prescribed a lot for our rugby guys, but with bands. It comes from, Chris Corfus actually made it mainstream within, at least there. You don't see anyone doing it now, but basically the concept was the ankle rocker and being able to find a position with a positive shin angle and being able to jump. And his theory is the players or the athletes that were the best jumpers from that good morning or hip hinge position were often the fastest athletes. So it's an interesting concept. Yeah, it's very interesting. So that good morning jump, obviously, I think that's the hidden exercise. That's the secret exercise. Only Egypt's doing it, and only a few speed stuff. That's secrets.
I was going to say, I think actually if a person wants to start doing that kind of movement, you know, to start off with things like jump squat, which is also another good exercise, you know, to build the glutes. I know if I do jump squats and adding a barbell to it, that's one thing I also like giving to my weightlifters, is barbell jump squats. That's another great one for growing the glutes. But it's also one of those exercises that's brutal. But I think what you were mentioning with, you know, doing it with a band, I think if someone has never done good morning with the explosiveness upwards, which could then be a progression. Start off with the bands, then go to the bar, and just do the one where you explode onto the balls of your feet. And then, don't just go and try something fancy because you saw, like you said, Muhammad Iyab doing it. That's also one thing, like these weightlifters that are world-class athletes, and they are athletes. So basically they can do anything and they can do it safely. And their bodies are conditioned for it. And then you see a newcomer try these exercises, and it doesn't always end the best way.
For sure. And I think one exercise we're left out of here is the back extension. And back extension, people go, back extension just works the back. But there's ways you can do it to make it smash the glutes like crazy. And instead of thinking about pulling your shoulders up and arching your back, you think about pushing your hips through the pad, like you're doing like an upside down hip thrust, I guess. And by doing that, it changes the exercise completely. It's a completely different exercise when you push the hips through the pad versus raising the shoulders. So if you want to target the erectors, you can just raise the shoulders up and down, and that way you feel it there. I mean, you still feel the glutes, but if you push the hips through the pad, it's a completely different feeling. And you can do that on the 90-degree and the 45-degree back extension. It feels better on the 90-degree back. Well, it feels really damn good on both, but I think the 90-degree back extension, because it's the hardest part of the exercise is when your body is completely straight. So you get that lockout. It can be very, very tough. And then to tack onto that is the hyper dead. And essentially it's, I think people have a billion names for it, but I got this exercise from Steve Pulcinella way back in the day. I don't know if you, from Iron Sport Gym, Colm.
Yep, I know the guy.
Yeah. So essentially on a 45-degree back extension, and you load the barbell and you hold it in a snatch grip, and then you're basically doing snatch deadlifts on a 45-degree back extension machine. So you're locked in, so everything is hips. And man, I used to do this exercise every single week when we had a 45-degree back extension. I loved it. I was doing up to like 80 kilos for reps, just smashing hammies and glutes doing that one. I mean, that thing is just going to make you stupidly strong doing stuff like that. So back extension machines, if you're growing glutes, you should be doing them as part of your program. The best thing is you can do them body weight too. So if you're doing heavier stuff at the start of your session, maybe you're doing heavy hip thrust plus some reps, maybe doing some kind of heavy squat, Romanian deadlift or lunge or whatever, you can do high rep burnout sets on the back extension, sets of 20, 25, 30. I mean, if you're like a masochist and just want to like absolutely destroy yourself doing it, then you can do 20 to 30 reps. Same thing with lunges. I've walked a whole rugby field doing walking lunges before, and I could barely walk after that. Yeah, stupid things like that, like all these things you can do just for a bit of fun, if you call that fun. But back extensions, Colm, are you in on those for glute development?
Yeah, for sure. For me, this is another one that really is equipment dependent. I'm a big fan of those with the barbell as well, loading it. I don't normally have snatch grip, but that's a good idea.
More range.
However, for heavyweights, and then you combine the fact that you're loading a barbell, it can just be quite a lot on the machine or the bench, depending on the quality of it. So, like myself, I love the exercise, but I don't tend to do it because I just feel that bench
tip
moving a little bit under my weight, just body weight, and then I don't want to add too much weight on top of it. Other than that, though, when I've in Aussie, we had some really sturdy ones. It's such an awesome exercise.
Yeah,
if you can load it heavy like that.
You can do it with single leg too, but I feel the single leg hits the hammies harder than the glutes.
Same,
yeah. So
I still like it, but
no, I agree with you. Mona, you got something to pitch in there?
Yeah, I wanted to say it's also another popular one with weightlifters, and also for like you were mentioning the equipment dependent, and it also depends on the athletes and stuff. But often what the weightlifters will do, especially when they are in a gym and there's no pipe extension machine or whatever, they end up holding each other's legs on a flat bench and maybe put it on blocks. But again, then you need to make sure you trust your partner who's holding your legs. Yeah, but it's such a great exercise, putting plates at the top of your back. It's just one of those exercises that's very good for weightlifters, just again, building a very strong, basically posterior chain. And it's just, it's one of those exercises where you don't see a lot of people doing it, but it's definitely one of my favorites that I've done over the years, and that, I like giving to athletes if they do have the equipment.
Yeah, nice. And I think we'll do one more exercise for this before we get into some set rep stuff. But the kettlebell swing is another one that you're basically doing a violent, fast Romanian deadlift, and you're cycling just heavy hip extensions over and over and over. And it's just important that if you're doing the kettlebell swing, don't do them CrossFit style. Don't do what you see everyone doing with bending their legs and squatting the weight and then using their arms to bring it over the head. Your arms should be relaxed, and the kettlebell should move just from the momentum from your hips. A good cue I got read from Dan John is attack your zipper. So, wait, do chicks have zippers in their pants sleeve? I don't know if they even do. So I don't know if that cue works. Do you even know what I'm talking about?
What do you mean a zipper in a pants? No.
So in your pants for dudes, you have a zipper, right? To take a piss.
What? Oh, like like with jeans, but you won't have it.
Yeah,
well,
like
I
in
guess
jeans.
If we wear jeans, yes, unless you wear jeggings. But so okay. I guess we do.
So,
have that.
Okay, I was just double checking. I was
like,
I was just double checking that maybe our 2-woman audience understands what I mean by attack the zipper. So you're going to attack the zipper with the kettlebell. So it's basically going to be above your knees when it comes through. So, and another way is if you have like one of those small aerobic steps, you put those in between your legs, and you don't want the kettlebell to hit it. And that's going to keep everything hip hingy versus squatty. Because if you start bending your legs a lot, you're basically taking the hips out of the movement, and you're starting to bring in more of the quads. And then the kettlebell should kind of fly up with a relaxed arm. It should end up with your arms basically in front of you. It shouldn't go above that and go above your head. That makes no sense. You can't. It just doesn't work that way. And then on the way down, you can either relax and let the kettlebell fall, or you can pull the kettlebell down back to your legs so it's a faster eccentric. Obviously, you can add bands to it to increase the eccentric too. Obviously, that's more advanced if you're doing that, because you have to turn that extra speed back the other way. So just let the kettlebell fall back down initially before you start to do stuff like that too. I don't know if you guys are fans of the kettlebell swing or not. Cole, maybe. I don't know if that's something you use in strongman very often.
It's actually one of my favorite exercises out of
all
you go. Exercises. Yeah.
What?
I love
Why?
them.
Why your favorite of all exercises?
I love doing them. I love the motion, and I just find it such a good ender for a session, basically. I've been a big fan of them. I think it was actually Brett who showed me how to do them properly back at AUT as well.
Yeah.
In a way, using the hip hinge motion. But I think it's a fantastic assistance movement for strongmen in general. And just most sports really, like explosively moving the hips that way. And I really started playing around with it after I read Andy Bolton's book on deadlifting. I can't remember the title of the book, but he was saying how that's one of his favorite assistance exercises for the deadlift. He doesn't squat the deadlift at all. He's a very hip dominant, like hinger with a pull. And for myself, being similar, I find it's a fantastic assistance exercise. It does, in strongman, we do throwing over a bar. It looks similar to a kettlebell swing, but you're better off just practicing the throws. The technique's a little bit different. But at the same time, if you've got no space to throw it, and throws aren't always in the competition, it's a nice movement. My main problem with the kettlebell swing, again, is just equipment and loading it. So sometimes sometimes there's have you seen the Dinny Stone handles?
Yeah.
That you can buy? You
the
can
very
load
thin,
those
the thin, Dinny Stone. Are you talking about the thin circle ones? Or are you talking about something different?
It's so it's like a ring, and then
Yeah.
it's got a pipe that you load the plates on.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
So you can use that for swings. I think those kind of implements are nice because you can load them.
Yeah.
But then you still run into the issues of like 20 kg plates can be quite wide, so it
Yeah.
just affects the stance. So ideally, like if you have access to some super heavy kettlebells or some kind of really dense implement that you can do well. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of kettlebell swings.
But even with the super heavy kettlebells, they get so massive and the handles get so thick you can barely swing them. Like even the ones that are like 80, 90, 100 kilos, man, they're so massive. Obviously, they have to be big to be that heavy,
Does the
but
handle get thicker as well?
the handles get thicker too. Yeah.
Oh
So
yeah,
it's
that's
like a
no
So
good.
me, I got a fright, but it's almost like a forearm. It's like a forearm workout as well. Then,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I've never used one with really fat handles, but I would. That
Mm.
sounds a bit dangerous to me.
yeah.
Uh, like of it flying out.
Well,
But with
well,
at least with a Dinny one, it's
yeah.
thin.
Mm.
I was gonna say, in CrossFit, that was probably one of my worst exercises to do. Like, if there was one exercise I disliked the most out of all the exercises, it was kettlebell swings,
What?
because nothing else made me want to vomit like kettlebell swings. I have no idea if it's because of the backwards and forward motion that I just got like motion sickness or whatever. Also, what you guys were mentioning about the kettlebells and like obviously like safety and things. I was at a CrossFit gym once, and one of the girls who was competing, she was going to go to regionals, and they were doing, I think they were doing a team workout or something, and one of her teammates was doing one of the workouts with the kettlebell and ended up letting it go from their hands and ended up dropping on her foot. So she broke her foot before
Oh,
going to regional, so she was out. So yeah, it's definitely, I can see how if you want to do something like that and take on those massive handles or those heavier ones, just make sure there's no one around.
oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I actually wanted to like ask you guys, there was one exercise that we haven't actually spoken about, and
Hmm.
something I've seen over the years. It used to be very popular. I don't see it as much anymore, and I'm not quite sure why. But what are your thoughts on belt squats?
I like him. I like him. Just takes the load off the back and be able to use them. For glutes though, I'm not so sure because it tends to put you in a position where you can't lock the hips out because you're kind of partly bent over the whole time.
Mm.
Because if you lock the hips out, the belt falls down your ass and then you lost it.
Yeah.
so so you don't get that hip extension. So you don't feel the glutes as much when you're doing the belt squat. But in saying that, if doing something um, like a deficit like sumo squat kind of thing when you're holding the kettlebell between your legs, I mean that's a good substitute you can use for a belt squat. That you're not loading something on your back that will give you the glutes better glute involvement than doing it on an actual belt squat machine. Yeah. Anyone else? That's
And
it.
Cole, did you ever do things like belt squats? No, I just wanted
I
to mention it because it's like I like doing it, and obviously it's a nice squat variation that, like you were saying, when I had my back injury, um, and I couldn't do a squat at all, that was actually one of the exercises that, even though we did it on a flywheel, but I mean, I also did them sometimes on when I would stand on boxes and I would have a belt around me and a chain and the kettlebell hanging at the bottom. And I felt like it worked actually really well. But again, it's one of those exercises. I think it's dependent on the individual.
Yeah, I like them for two main reasons. Working around injury, so like you said, and also adding a little bit of extra quad volume without beating up the lower back too much. Can't say I've specifically implemented them for glutes, but for those, like just in general, those two reasons, I think they're a really good exercise, especially for like that strongman who's very posterior chain dominant and maybe can't tolerate too many other kinds of exercises. If you put the belt squat on them, they can hit the quads really well without risking any of those other aspects.
Nice. Nice. And when we talk sets and reps as well for these exercises, I think it's exercise dependent with a lot of these. So for the hip thrust specifically, I'm a big fan of doing sets of 8 to 10, and then doing like a drop off set for the last one of like 15 to 20, or a burnout set, or whatever you want to call it. I think that works really well, and you can progress that through the weeks pretty easily. You could do, for example, sets of 8 and then a set of 15. And then as you get through the month, you can do a set of 10, then a set of 20, and things like that. So there's things you can do there. Regarding the big lifts, squats, deadlifts, RDLs, sets of 8 to 10 as well. You don't want to go too crazy on those. And then when you get to your single leg work, like your bogey and split squats, or even your back extensions, your lunges, some of the other things we've talked about, then we're looking at like 10 to 20 plus reps on the higher end. I don't know if you see it the same way, Colm, if maybe you like to use lower reps for some things when it comes to glute development.
Not super low, just like you were saying. In terms of hypertrophy, I think that's good advice. And I also like getting people to finish with a higher rep set of hip thrusts.
Yeah.
One, to feel that burn, but also I feel like it takes away, like, I don't know if this is a thing or not, but I feel like for some reason people love trying to just go for the burn in the glutes. And that's why you see people trying to do these crazy hip circle exercises that walking on. Have you seen that one? They walk up like a stairmaster and they do like a kickback.
Oh, dude.
Have you seen that?
I think I've seen something stupid like that.
Same
I've-
idea.
Yes, I know what you're talking about now. Yeah. That's it's so fucking retarded.
You'll get a glute burn, but there's no load, like, it'll burn. So everyone seems to want to do these exercises that give that like burn feeling. So just do the hip thrust, just do higher reps at the end, and your glutes will be fried, and you can overload that over the weeks. In terms of just glute size development, I wouldn't really I could see a justification for doing sets of 5 on the hip thrust again before a higher rep set, or like over a period of time working up to sets of 5. But I wouldn't. 5 would really be the limit for me. I wouldn't really go heavier. And if you're if you're strong at all, you would have to use such heavy load. It's just a pain to set up. So in terms of rep ranges, I would stick to a little bit higher, like 5 or more. I would lean even towards like 6 or more. 5's a more rare case.
I have done a 1RM hip thrust before.
How was
that? It was all good. It's one of those lifts you can do 1RMs for and you're not worried about getting crushed.
Yeah. But, you can do it. I just don't see the point really for glute hypertrophy.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, it can be fun. Just quickly on the hip thrust, I wanted to say, you mentioned before you got some tips off Brett Contreras, and you had been doing hip thrust for a little while. Are you able to share the sort of tips? Like what are we, because hip thrust can be one that's done wrong very often.
Yeah.
I was wondering if he gave you some
I think
cues.
He evolved a lot of the technique over time after that as well anyway, but a lot of it is tucking the hips under the top. So like, when you're lying flat on the ground and you push your lower back into the ground when you're doing like lying leg raises and stuff, finding that position at the top so you can actually squeeze your butt. And then your head position and things and your chest position will just kind of be personal preference. So you can either look straight up at the roof or you can look slightly forward, and you can kind of cave your chest a little so you're kind of like crunched over, and all that helps you feel the glutes during exercise basically. And then obviously pushing through your heels versus pushing through your toes or the flat foot there. So push through your heels while you're doing your hip thrust, and that's pretty much the basics of it. And then just finding the right foot position, having that shin basically vertical. Some people have their feet too close or too far away, and you can get a little more hamstring quad doing that versus being right in the middle. Yeah.
Yeah. So the common, like I learn it from him as well, same place, but the common issues I find when I'm teaching someone, like for people listening out, is they feel it in their lower back sometimes. And I find that hip position, just like you were saying, if you try to cue them to get a little bit more into that posterior pelvic tilt position, it should make them feel their glutes more, be a little bit easier on the lower back. Cueing, looking down towards the knees can kind of pull them into that position as well. And then the other issue that I have with people sometimes is they feel it mainly in their hammies.
Yeah.
Which I find mainly I play around with foot position. Sometimes I do have them do a pause at the top. But there's a few different things that you can do. And
well, a lot of it with the hammies is the load's too heavy often. Often it's loading that causes that issue that I found. And it's just having to strip it right back.
but yeah, those are the main issues that I have when, like, if someone's listening and they're not sure about hip thrust, those are the main things that I've seen that I would watch out for.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think loading is a big one as well because it feels so much easier than doing other things. Yeah, when you go too heavy too quickly, you lose that feeling in the glutes, and
Yeah.
it kind of defeats the purpose of the exercise. But that kind of ends that segment of glutes. But Mona, I know there's a whole new competition starting tomorrow, correct? With
Yes.
international weightlifting.
Yes, so there is a lot of excitement around the IWF Grand Prix, which is starting tomorrow. So it's going to be from the 8th until the 18th. And what I saw, I must obviously just double check, but I think it's going to be free live streaming, which is going to be so awesome. They haven't released the schedule yet. So I think the IWF will release the schedule tomorrow. So we'll see, who's lifting when. But again, it's an Olympic qualifier, so you are going to see the best of the best compete. Obviously, the athletes who do well here, these are points added to their Olympic qualification, and then also towards, they have to do a certain amount of competition. So this is one of the competitions that counts towards going to the Olympics. And I've seen plenty of athletes on training camps. There's been a whole bunch here in the USA that I've seen, like one of the athletes that she's world champion, she's European champion, Salford. She's in the 87 kg competition. She's going to be a very exciting one to watch. And there's going to be a whole bunch more. I know, like in the super heavies. I don't know if Lasha is competing or not. So if he is, that will be exciting. I know with the woman, Mary will be competing. I'm not quite sure how you pronounce her last name. It could be Tyson or Tyson. But yeah, she will be competing. And I'm not quite sure who else. Once they release the start list, I can definitely talk about it a bit more next week once I've had a full week of, watching all the excitement. But for those of you who are weightlifters and you want to see the best of the best, tune in. I think it might be on the IWF website or on the IWF YouTube channel. And what we will do is we'll keep you guys updated on the Lift Big Eat Big Instagram as well. So go follow that if you're not on there already.
Nice.
Yeah, and I'll be posting, about how the athletes are doing and who's winning, etc.
Oh, perfect. And I'm going to introduce a new segment to the show now, and I'm going to spring it on you guys. Colin, what are you training this week?
So I've been sick, so I'm just getting my next session is going to be deadlifts. Nothing crazy. I'm going to do some every minute on the minute, like 10 minutes of singles at the start, and then a bunch of volume on RDLs.
That's part of your off-season program too, right?
Yes, it is actually. It's the same. I've modified it a little bit just to for the workload to suit me, but yeah, it's the exact same principles.
Nice. I've actually been running your conjugate strongman, just the main lift set reps, just for some of my main list of my deadlift stuff. That's been legit as. It's nice, lowish volume, but you still get a lot of strength stuff in there. So if anyone's interested, check that out too. So you got deadlifts. Mona, what are you training this week?
Glutes. So this podcast was perfect for me. Just glutes. No, I'm kidding. No, but obviously I am doing a glute emphasis program and I'm on week 3 now. And I'm trying to get the motivation. Obviously with having a baby, it's obviously I've got my goals and stuff like that, but waking up many times in the night, it does add up. But I'm one of those people who, if I train in the morning, I am, I do well in my session. I'm motivated. And I know obviously motivation is one of those things where, it's not always, you're not always going to be motivated. You must just show up in the gym. You must just do the work. And I must just practice what I preach there. And after this, James and I said we are going to do a training session. So I'll be doing my day 2 of my 4-day-a-week program. So that's what I've been focusing on. Yes, it's glute emphasis, but it's also whole body. So I do a lot of upper body stuff as well. And that's been exciting because I've got a goal again. And for me, it's always, if I have a goal, I just have, I feel like I've got purpose. I feel like I walk into the gym. I don't like doing a whole bunch of random stuff. I think it's the athlete in me. where I love a program. I love being coached, even though I do coaching myself. But it's always nice having someone else do your program. And yeah, and for those who don't know, James is doing my glute emphasis training program. So you can keep an eye on me doing my stuff. And if I have a day where I don't feel like it, he can be like, you have to get in that gym and do that session.
Yep, for sure. And then I'm just doing
What
some
do you do?
bodybuilding style stuff. I'm doing some bodybuilding stuff all week. Well, actually, for the past few months. Back to jiu-jitsu tomorrow, which would be nice.
Awesome.
Yep, to get back in there. It's been a little while, like a month and a half maybe away with everything that's been going on. So get back to it. Maybe look to compete again at the end of the year, early next year. Not sure yet. And then, but yeah, I'm just trying to get huge and shredded. I've been running the hill out the back too. I've actually been running the hill that we have, well, a little slope, I should say, outside the house.
Yeah, I was going to say, he calls it a hill, but
it's
a
hill.
not a
It goes
hill.
up. It goes up. It's a hill. It's not flat, put it that way.
I think we need to like make an Instagram video of this hill.
You have to get the protractor out.
Yeah.
Measure the angle.
That thing looks pretty flat to me, but
I'm gonna get the video, but I'm gonna get you to like crouch down and make it look even taller. And then
yeah, like angle it up.
And then, but I've been running that after every session basically. It's been really, really good. Doing that because
it's also a great way to get our doggy tired.
Yeah, that too. And it's because we get stuck in the idea of, we shouldn't do cardio after lifting and stuff because, interference effect, blah, blah, blah. But the interference effects are so damn small, if not non-existent, that it doesn't really matter. And if your goals are...
It's not like we're running marathons. And I think that's where, people, get it wrong. I mean, and it's one of those nice things where like when you do it and you actually start to feel fitter, like, I don't know about you guys, but then I start to feel better in the gym as well. I start to feel better in like general life things. So, adding that into
elite athletes lift and do their sport on the same day all the time. I mean, I've been around how many damn teams and pro athletes, and a lot of them get damn huge and jacked, and they're lifting in the morning and then going on the field straight after that, and then going on the field again in the afternoon. So they've basically got 2 conditioning sessions in the day on top of their lifting. And I mean, these guys, they're top end athletes, so they kind of respond well to everything, but that effect between the two isn't such a thing. I mean, if you're doing cardio before your strength training, don't do that. That's not smart. But doing your strength training, then doing whatever it is for your cardio stuff, you'll be all good, and you'll probably feel a lot better for doing it if you're not doing anything already. I know Com has to do a fair bit for strongman as well, so he'll be carrying things after sessions or during sessions even, and that becomes brutal too. But I think that brings us to the end of today's show. So please like, subscribe, share it. I've just had our doggy come nose me here, probably to tell me it's dinner time for her. And then tune in for next week. We'll have more topics just like this. Also, the Lift Big Eat Big Underground is in the description. Check that out. 1 subscription price, you get access to every single training program and our private Discord community. So we will catch you next week.